Right, there we go. So welcome to this taster session. What we are going to do today is look at a poem called Checking Out My History by John Agard. We're going to practice our language analysis skills and our poetry analysis skills. And we're also going to have a go at a little bit of creative writing ourselves and being creatively expressive. Now, if you've been to my classes before, then you'll have an idea of how they work. But if you are brand new, I've set your mics off just to make things easier for the taster session. But if you did come to the normal Junior Trailblazers class, you can have your mic off and you can read sections out for me and so on. So you can get more vocal in the actual class if you'd like to. Your videos are optional, like I said. We can interact in the chat box. So let's start by interacting in the chat box. Why don't you tell me where in the country you are, not your specific address, but the nearest big town. I'm going to tell you where I am as well. Now, this I really like because it's really exciting to think that we are all, oh, look, Flo, you're in Wendover. You're actually not too far from me at all. And Duke in Oxford. All across the country and in different countries as well. Which is crazy, isn't it? To think that we're all here together, all across the country, doing an English lesson. Right, let's get started. So we're going to have a match-up warm-up. I've got 4 images for you, A, B, C, and D. And I want to see if you can match them to their names. So we've got Mary Seacole, Nanny of the Maroons, Toussaint Louverture, and Shaka the Great Zulu. So you can have a go at doing this in the chat box. You can match up the letter and the number together. Don't worry too much if you have absolutely no idea. I'm looking at all your answers and there's quite a lot of correct ones, and I wasn't actually banking on any of you getting many of them correct. Okay. Right. I'm going to tell you the answers so you can sort of check yourself. You can score yourself. So A is number 3, Toussaint Louverture. B is, where are we? Is Mary Seacole, number 1. C is number 4, Shaka the Great Zulu. And D is, well, it's the last remaining one, it's 2, Nanny of the Maroons. Okay. Now, if you've already had a chance to read through the poem that we're going to look at today, you probably have an idea of why I've given you these images. But if not, don't worry, all will be revealed soon. So the first thing I'd like you to have a think about today is all learning important? Now, I'm asking this specifically in the context of what we have to learn at school, or if you're home educated at home. You know, what do you learn in history? What do you know about your own heritage? And what do you need to learn for your future? So if you're doing this lesson with a sibling or with a parent, you can talk about these questions, or you can just have a little think. And if you want to, you can share an idea in the chat box. Okay, so like I said at the start, we're going to explore a poem this week called Checking Out My History by John Agard. John Agard is a poet that is much beloved in this country, but he actually has Caribbean heritage. We can see that in some of his poetry, in lots of his poetry. And also, this is a poem that is on many GCSE poetry cluster lists as well. And you may have already come across it at school. So we're going to have a look at the poem, but whilst we're reading it, I'd like you to do these things. So if you want to, on the side of your poem, you can create a little key. Okay. I'd like you to underline any words that are written with non-standard spelling. Okay, so they're spelt in an unusual way, and actually in the case of this poem they're spelt phonetically, so they're spelt as they sound rather than how they're correctly spelt. And I'd like you to put a wiggly line under any non-standard grammar structures. So if a sentence is put together in a way that makes you think, my English teacher would probably get a red pen out for this, then put a wiggly line underneath it. And you can put a box around any repeated phrases that give the poem a Caribbean rhythm, if that's what you think you can detect from it. Okay. Now, like we discovered right at the start, you're all joining this taster session from all across the country. Some of you will be in year 6, some of you will be in year 9. So if you find any of this a bit too tricky, you can have a go. And if you find it nice and easy, I would love to hear your thoughts as we go through the session in the chat box. Okay. So let's get going. I will read out the poem, and whilst I'm reading it out, I would like you to follow along. Okay. Checking Out Me History by John Agard. Dem tell me what dem want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history, blind me to me own identity. Dem tell me about 1066 and all dat. Dem tell me about Dick Whittington and he cat. But Toussaint Louverture, no, dem never tell me about dat. Toussaint, a slave with vision, lick back Napoleon battalion, and first black republic born. Toussaint de Thorn, to de French, Toussaint de Beacon of de Haitian Revolution. Dem tell me about de man who discovered de balloon, and de cow who jump over de moon. Dem tell me about de dish ran away with de spoon. But dem never tell me about Nanny de Maroon. Nanny, seafar woman of mountain dream, fire woman struggle, hopeful stream to freedom river. Dem tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, but dem never tell me about Shaka, de great Zulu. Dem tell me about Columbus and 1492, but what happened to the Caribs and the Arawaks too? Dem tell me about Florence Nightingale and she lamp, and how Robin Hood used to camp. Dem tell me about old King Cole was a merry old soul, but dem never tell me about Mary Seacole. From Jamaica, she travelled far to the Crimean War. She volunteered to go, and even when the British said no, she still braved the Russian snow. A healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise to the dying. Dem tell me what dem want to tell me. But now I checking out me own history. I carving out me identity. Okay. So I'd like you to have a think about who is Dem. Who do we think the poet, the speaker means by Dem? But what I am going to do is just give you a moment to follow these instructions that I gave beforehand so that nobody is hurried. And then there's a question for you to think about. Why do you think Agard uses these speech patterns in this poem? So I'm going to give you, let's see what time we're at. I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes to do this and have a think about this question. Okay, I'm hoping now that your printed version, or if you're looking at it on a screen, you might just be looking closely at it, picking out examples. But if you have got it printed, I'm hoping now that you're seeing lots of underlined parts and wiggly lines and boxes, and you're starting to make sense of the non-standard style that this poem is written in. So, why do you think Agard uses these speech patterns? We'll come back to that question. That's a thinking point that we'll continually revisit. But our important question first is, who is Dem? Who is the speaker of this poem talking about when he says Dem? Yeah, lots of you are saying them and they, and you're absolutely right. Dem is a non-standard way of saying them or they. But who specifically is he talking about? Nick says his teachers. I think there's a strong case for that, Nick. Well done. Kerry says the same. Archie says white people. Yeah, I think there's a strong case for that as well. Sammy just says people. Nick says white people as well. Flo says English and American people. Duke, that's a good one. Duke says the people that don't listen. Yeah, the people that are telling him information that isn't what he wants to hear. Isla says mean people. Yeah, there is a little undertone of them and us, isn't there? Which can sometimes make the them seem sort of mean or sort of put them in a negative light, possibly. Juliet, excellent. Juliet says the people that don't want him to know about his own heritage. Maybe not necessarily they don't want him to know, but maybe they're prioritizing the sort of heritage they think he should be learning about. Really good, everybody. Well done. Okay, I've got a few questions for you to think about. You can write your answers in the chat box, or you can do it on paper, or if you're doing the class with a sibling or an adult, you can just talk about your answers. So again, this is going to be looking closely at the poem and collecting some information. So what different things is Agard told about in his, we can presume maybe his history lessons or at school? What things was he not told about that he wanted to be told about? And why do you think he wanted to know about those things? Why does he want to know about the things that he was not told about? I'm really interested to see your answers for this one. Good, Sammy? Well done, Isaac. Yeah, well done, Duke. And well done, Juliet. Juliet says he wanted to check out his own history. And Duke says he was told about white history or white British history. And there were other things that he wanted to know about. So I suppose this links back to my question right at the start about what learning and what information do we all need to know or want to know? Yeah, very good, Archie, and very good, Isla. Okay, we are going to move on from these questions. Don't worry too much if you haven't got through all of them, as long as you've had a little think about each of them. So I'm going to ask you all to pop into breakout rooms now. So breakout rooms are a really, really good opportunity to sort of explore some ideas together, talk through your ideas. So the question I want you to talk about, we're only going to go in for 1 minute, is who is he saying the poem to and what is he trying to achieve? So is he saying it to his teachers? Because he's saying them or they, which makes me think maybe he isn't saying it to them. But who could he be saying it to? There's no right or wrong answers. This is how you interpret the words on the page. Okay, what is he trying to achieve? And with that question, what is he trying to achieve? You might like to think back to the non-standard English and the non-standard spelling and grammar and think about why he did it that way. Okay, so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms now. And yeah, as soon as you come back from the breakout rooms, you can share your answers and ideas in the chat box. If you don't go into the breakout rooms, then it's a really good opportunity for you to get a head start on sharing your ideas on these questions in the chat box instead. If you're already back from the breakout room, then you can let me know in the chat box, what do you think John Agard is trying to achieve in this poem? Okay, right, that's everybody back from the breakout rooms. It'd be really nice to hear from you all. What do you think? Well, who is he saying the poem to? What is he trying to achieve? And is what he's trying to achieve, does that tie in at all with why he used non-standard or non sort of English, British grammar and spelling writing in his poem? So let's have a look at some of your answers in the chat box. Kerry says to get teachers to allow him to learn about his own culture rather than white culture. Okay, so almost like a plea, like I want to learn other things that are more relevant to me. Okay, good. Ellie thinks he's saying it to himself. Yeah, it could possibly be like a internal monologue type of thing, like a thought process. Sammy says, I think John Agard is trying to achieve the knowledge of his own history. Very good. Good, Nick. Sammy says he might be lonely and talking to himself. Yeah, could be. Lots of great ideas. Well done, Isla. Well done, Isaac. Good, OJ. So OJ says he's trying to make the teachers teach other cultures and not just British. So maybe he's trying to make a point that the curriculum is quite narrow and he'd like to know other things as well. And I'm sure other things other than his own heritage, but world things. Now, really good. Duke has mentioned about how the poem is written, so that non-standard English. Duke says making the superiors listen and the accent helps the feeling of the poem. Yeah, it could sort of be a suggestion of him trying to show his own culture, not fitting those tight white British structures, and maybe reflecting what his voice sounds like, maybe trying to make it more personal to him, possibly. Okay, good. Right, some really nice ideas. Now, oh, I think we've missed a slide. Maybe it's back to front. Maybe not. Okay, I was going to ask you what is enjambment, but the definition is already there for you. So you might have come across enjambment before. Enjambment is when one line continues onto the next line of poetry without there being a full stop or a comma or some sort of break in the line. What effect, let's just plug this in. What effect do you think enjambment can create? So how does it make a poem feel or sound when you read a poem with enjambment? There's lots of enjambment throughout this poem. What does it do to the feeling of it? Does it do anything to the rhythm or pace of it? Okay, OJ says it can be fast paced. It can certainly create a pace because there's no real stops, is there? It's just the next line, the next line. Kerry says could possibly make it feel quicker as there's no pause. Very good. Flo says rhythm. Isla says fast. It can sort of lovely. Julietta, Noah, Joseph, and Timothy, unstoppable. It does create a sense of an ongoing feeling in a poem. You know, there's no stopping, there's no pauses, it's unstoppable. It's picking up momentum and going and going and going. Okay, good. Some nice ideas there. Now, to try and link in this technique and the poet and the meaning behind his poem is quite a tricky thing to do, but I think you'll give this a really good go. Why do you think John Agard uses so much enjambment in this poem? Now, we've already said enjambment can create a faster pace, but why? Why would he want to do that? What does that add to the meaning of his poem? What extra meaning might it tell us? And again, there's no real wrong answers. This is your interpretation of why this poet has chosen to use this technique. Now that is a lovely idea, Sammy. Sammy says it might add the feeling of importance because there's no break to stop Flo agrees. So maybe it might make the point he's making feel really powerful and important because it just keeps going like a rolling boulder. Nothing can stop this really important point from being heard. Lovely. Interesting. That isn't the only interpretation of the effect of this enjambment, but it's interesting that so many of you think that. And Kerry, that's a really nice idea as well, that instead of stopping and pausing, it just carries on. And maybe that might reflect the idea that people have to just carry on with whatever, they're given. If you're being taught certain things in history, you just have to get on with it. Or you just have to keep going until you find out what you want to find out about your cultural heritage. I just saw something else that was quite good, but now it's whizzed past in the chat box. I think somebody said, oh, here we go. OJ says enthusiastic because he keeps going on at the top about the topic at a fast pace. Yeah, I think you're right. It does reflect his enthusiasm and passion for the point that he's trying to make. Good. Okay, we are going to do a tiny bit of creative writing in a moment. But first of all, for those of you, particularly those of you that might be in the older age range in the class today, I've got two paragraphs here that are pretty much almost GCSE standard about the poem. We've got one paragraph about the structure and the form of the poem, so how it's put together, how it's structured, and then a paragraph about the tone and the perspective within the poem. Now, I've left out some of the words, and if you want to have a go, you can put the number and the corresponding word into the chat box. Okay, and then maybe in a minute or so, I'll read out the paragraphs with the words in the correct place. Okay, well done to all of you that have made some suggestions in the chat box. There are mostly correct answers, a few not quite right. But it's great to see you all having a go at thinking about the missing words, but from this almost GCSE level analysis. Are you ready for the answers? If you found this particularly tricky, be reassured that there are lots of year 10s and probably some year 11s as well that would also find this quite tricky. But I didn't know who was coming to this taster session, so I had to make sure there was something for all of you. Right, I will read this aloud and then we'll move on to this small piece of creative writing we get to do on the end of the session. Structure and form. Checking Out Me History is structured in a series of stanzas, which are poetry paragraphs of varying lengths with irregular line lengths and rhythms. The free verse form mirrors the fluidity and diversity of cultural histories, allowing for a flexible exploration of different voices and perspectives. The use of enjambment between lines creates a sense of continuity and flow, reinforcing the poem's themes of interconnectedness and solidarity. Tone and perspective. The tone of the poem is defiant and celebratory as the speaker asserts his right to reclaim his own history. Agard adopts a first-person perspective, allowing readers to empathise with the speaker's experiences of cultural erasure and marginalisation. Got some big words in here. Like I said, it is GCSE level. The use of direct address, such as "Dem tell me," invites readers to challenge their own assumptions about history and confront the perceived biases in traditional narratives. So there you go. I'm loving that, OJ said that they got 8 right. Juliet got 7 right. I mean, that's pretty impressive. Really impressive, in fact. Okay, so we're going to move on from that. Right, what you need to have a little think about now is this is going to be the material that feeds into the creative writing task that I'm going to give you in a minute. You'll only have about 6 minutes for the writing, okay? So I'd like you to think about your own cultural and personal identity. Now, you might have a really wild mix of all different nationalities and religions and cultures throughout your family, or you might have one really clear defined one. That's absolutely fine. You might not entirely know. That's also fine. Sometimes your culture and your personal identity can be determined from your friends around you and where you live. You need to think about what type of knowledge is important to you. So if you were John Agard and you were thinking about what you're being taught in school, what sort of thing would you like to know about? And then I want you to think about what is taught in schools, whether you're in school or home educated, versus what you'd like to be taught. So I'm going to give you a minute's thinking time on this because this is really important. And I'd like you to gather your thoughts in this way. So I want you to give me, or jot down on your paper, you don't have to do this in the chat box, 3 to 5 things that are taught but not important to you. And then 3 to 5 things that you think are really important but they're not taught. I know in that last one I would put things like financial education and learning to manage money. I don't think that's taught, and I think that's really important. But it's not about what I think, it's about what you think. So take a minute to gather your ideas. Okay, I'm hoping you've got some ideas. They might just be a bit of a jumble in your mind at the moment, and that's absolutely fine. Um, as long as you've given some thought about to the type of things you are taught or that you learn about at home or at school, and then the things that you would really like to learn about. And it might be to do with your cultural heritage, like I said. So for me, I've got Viking ancestry, but I don't remember learning very much about Vikings at school. Maybe I would have liked to have learned more about that because that would be important to me. Okay, so this is what I would like you to do. So I'd like you to use this stanza. So a stanza is a poetry paragraph, isn't it? The one where the yellow arrow is pointing. I'd like you to recreate your own stanza that reflects the things that are important to you. Okay. So, oh, that's really good. Duke says how to grow your own food. And Flo says Irish culture. Yeah. So if you want to, you can incorporate non-standard spelling and grammar or slang or other languages. I know there's some of you in here, because I've taught you before, that you speak other languages at home. You can write the whole thing in another language if you want to. You can write it in any way that reflects who you are as a person, because what's really important about this poem is that the poet is searching for their own identity and their own history and finding out more about who they are. And so you need to try and get that same feeling across in your stanza. Okay, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. You can do it in the chat box or you can do it on paper. Or if you're working with a sibling or an adult, you can just talk about what you would put in your stanza. And if you get stuck, you can ask me for help. If anybody just wants clarity on the task, if you see in purple at the top there, those are the main instructions. So using this stanza templates, that stanza is a poetry paragraph. So the one underneath the yellow arrow, I'd like you to recreate your own stanza in the style of John Agard. And I want your poem to reflect the things that are important to you. So you might say, they tell me about algebra equations, but they never tell me about completing my taxes. They tell me about healthy eating, but what happened to the rainforest? Whatever you would like to put in there. And if you want to, you can do it in non-standard English if you think that reflects more of who you are as a person. Okay, reading some of your ideas in the chat box, some that have been put into the chat box for everyone to read, and some that have been sent directly to me are fabulous. Really lovely ideas, ideas that reflect who you are as people and what you want to know in life, and also your heritage and who you are in your identity. I'm going to read Isla's out. Isla says, they tell me about how to drive a car, but they never tell me how to buy a car. They talk to me about how to save paper, but the rainforest and how it's killing animals. So really nice ideas there. I think OJ's had a similar sense that you get taught one aspect of something, but you don't get taught how it applies to real life and the everyday. I like that, Ellie. They tell me about Shakespeare, but they never tell me about Harry Potter. Well, if you come to any of my classes, I do. I do use Harry Potter extracts quite frequently. Right, okay. That brings me to the end of what we're doing today. It's been so nice working with you, and you've had some great ideas. I hope that you found it enjoyable, and maybe it might change your perspective on poetry or poetry analysis, and also how you can use it as a start point, an inspiration to write your own poetry or your own creative writing. If you would like to come and join Junior Trailblazers, we start on Wednesday next week. There are a few places left, and our topic this term is going to be world journalism and travel writing. So we will look at some world journalism and analyse it. And we're also going to practice some travel writing, and writing about beautiful places around the world. So if you want to join me, you're very welcome to. Now, what we always do right at the very end in Trailblazers is a quick self-assessment. So before you sign off and go away and enjoy the rest of your evening, you can let me know how you found today's work. So this helps me understand how you're doing in the lesson. So whether you found it easy, a good challenge, too difficult, and how much you enjoyed it as well. So you can give me a letter and a number. And then once you've done that, you're free to go. Okay. Hope to see you all in a session soon, guys. Thanks for coming.